Ladies and gentlemen, Amanda Marcotte.
All right, I'm going to hold on to this podium for dear life here. So I'm here today to talk about internet feminism and how it made feminism impossible to ignore, which is something that the mainstream media was trying incredibly hard to do for a very, very long time. I don't know if anyone remembers this particular image from the 1990s. Time magazine actually tried to, I feel like they were trying to kill feminism by saying, "Is feminism dead?" By declaring Ally McBeal kind of the face of feminism. Another example of the bad old days, the March for Women's Lives in 2004 barely got any media coverage at all, but 1 million people showed up. This was an example of how much the mainstream media was trying to just sort of get rid of feminism. When they did talk about it, they would talk about feminists in these kind of stereotypes of being old-fashioned, shrill, out of touch, irrelevant. And I think this is kind of what feminists had to live under from the 1960s until very recently. Then came the bloggers. Bloggers were young, they were hip, they were funny, or at least we tried to be. You know, we like GIFs, we like memes, we like making icons where it's women throwing the finger. Big media noticed. Feminists bring in huge audiences. They create so much internet traffic. It's stuff that people like to talk about. People like to talk about gender. They like to talk about sexuality. They like to talk about men and women. And now, the 21st Century magazine, the online magazine, has a kind of women's section. Everyone does. And unlike the old women's sections that were just fashion and babies and other kinds of things like that, we actually have discussion of feminism in the modern women's section. You have XX Factor, which I write for. It's Slate's women's magazine. They are always talking about feminist stuff. That's one reason I write for them. The Cut is the fashion section of NY Mag. It's also the women's section. And as you can see here, they're constantly talking about feminism, even if it's just movie star coverage. Even The Atlantic got involved in this, which they couldn't quite bring themselves to have a feminism section. So instead they have The Sexes, where they have discourse about the sort of gender, equality, marriage, things like that. This is Daily Beast Newsweek's women's section. Again, very popular. They even have a conference for it every year called Women in the World. I write for them sometimes as well. So what you're really beginning to see is that feminists are beginning to drive the conversation. They used to be marginalized, excluded, the right got almost all the sort of coverage about gender issues. And nowadays you're beginning to see every kind of issue, everyone turns to the feminists and says, "What do you think?" For instance, online feminists were the ones who drew attention to the fact that the birth control hearings in Congress over whether or not insurance should cover birth control were all male panels. Because of that, this woman ended up getting a ton of media attention. This is Sandra Fluck. She testified in a sort of sub-hearing about the same issue that the Democrats had. This led to Rush Limbaugh calling her a slut on air because he was so furious that she was getting so much positive media attention. And that, in turn, led to even more media attention to the issue. And it led to Fluck becoming one of the speakers at the Democratic National Convention. Not only was she a speaker there, when they realized how popular she was, they moved her into a primetime slot and then went to town advertising it. What has happened because of online and internet feminism is the Democrats now embrace feminism in a way that they barely did before. It's not the little sister anymore, it's front stage. They get an entire night of the Democratic National Convention. And that was clearly a smart move. It's not, Democrats always get more of the women's vote, but women really turned out hardcore for Barack Obama this year, and it was in no small part because women's issues, feminist issues were at the center of the campaign. 21st century feminism has power. We have the ability to organize international anti-rape marches at the drop of a hat nowadays. This is Slut March, or Slut Walk. And now we're beginning to see that kind of activism blow up because of the internet's power around the world. These are anti-rape activists in India who've sort of started to build on the slut walk momentum. And with that, I will leave you.
What?